Hello, my name is McMaster. I am a second year in fine art painting at Ulster University. Today I'll be exploring the theme Artist Local Hero, Gerard Dillon, Irish Lycan Couple. The painting Irish Lycan Couple was painted by the artist Gerard Dillon, who was born within the Low Clonard Street in the Falls. He was born in 1916 and was given his birth name Francis Gerard Dillon. Dillon's father was a postman and British Army veteran, and his mother was an intense Catholic nationalist. Dillon's education took place in the Raglan Street Public Elementary School. Later on, he won a scholarship to the Hardy Boys School that was run by the Christian Brothers in 1927. Dillon ended his education by leaving school at the young age of 14, so he could begin his work as an apprentice to the house painting and decorating firm Maurice Sullivan. When he was young, Dillon possessed a strong sense of curiosity within both the world of culture and art. Dillon's goal was to become a self-taught artist that created and performed his own unique artistic style. As a result, Dillon's education was brief, due to the short time period of attending night classes at the Belfast College of Art. Dillon was only there for a few months, despite his mother willingly paying for his lessons. Dillon found the thought of being taught by someone else by something he believed he could teach himself to be frustrating. Dillon's career as a house painter meant he came to learn and adapt using the paint and brushes. However, after a while, Dillon found himself becoming bored with painting large spaces with the use of only one color. Whenever he had the opportunity to have a moment to himself, he would use an old piece of cardboard or either discarded piece of timber, so he could create small flourishes and designs with the use of wide paintbrush, despite being restricted to only one color. When Dillon left Belfast to move to London at the age of 18 in the year of 1934, he performed many manual jobs in order to support his art. These jobs included him being a painter, decorator, labourer, boilerman, and night porter. With the assistance of his jobs, Dillon used whatever money he earned to buy art materials for himself. Dillon regularly attended the art galleries so he could observe and teach himself within the world of art. Dillon made the choice of not following any other instructor or artistic style, other than his own, despite possibly of being poor, which outcome he was not troubled by. Dillon's goal was to become the type of artist who sought to see the world through a child's sincerity and innocence. At this point in time, he had already begun his artistic pursuit by experimenting with watercolors. He further went on to developing his work by using oil paints. Within the year of 1939, Dillon took a cycling holiday of Ireland with his friend and inspiring artist known as Ernie Atkin to Connemara. This moment of the young artist's life was considered to be a crucial key time within the process and development of his life. In Connemara, landscapes acted as a great influence on Dillon. He found himself being captivated and being inspired by the rugged but yet beautiful landscapes, which contained mountains, seas, lakes, and islands like Irish Lycan. Inside the island, Dillon found himself often allowed to be cut off from the world around him, and lived within a small cottage where he isolated himself. Dillon would take a boat journey away from pubs, churches, and barracks. This presented him with the feeling of discovery to the land where he was not required to be concerned with the suggestions of human interactions. From that day forth, Dillon spent most of his time in Connemara in the west of Ireland with George Campbell. Dillon went on to regularly painting his landscapes with the idea of envisioning the landscape through a window. The focuses of the windows were one of the many features contained within his work, due to the fact that he would never go outside to form his pieces. As an alternative option, Dillon instead used the method of placing people inside the landscape, similar to the idea of seeing actors on stage. He purposely added people into the landscape because they were performing a task. This caused Dillon to develop a lifelong fascination with the landscapes and the world of culture of the west of Ireland, and allowed him to produce his artwork pieces, The Yellow Bungalow and The Black Lake. He stopped from returning to Great Britain due to the outbreak of the Second World War, which caused him to return to Belfast. Due to the uninviting feeling Dillon found in Belfast, he decided to move to Dublin in order to see if he could find the sense of freedom he felt during his time in London. For the years of the war, Dillon spent his daily life in Dublin, where he would attend art exhibitions that would be held at the Dublin Painters Gallery, where he would meet and introduce himself to Marion Gillette. In the year of 1941, whilst he was in Dublin, Dillon joined the Wagstag Group, which was a group that invited young and adventurous Irish artists into their rankings. Within the group of artists, Gerard Dillon was able to meet leading contemporary artists and to begin the work alongside other artists and writers. Dillon had his own solo exhibition in the country shop at St. Stephen's Green in Dublin. His exhibition was opened by Marion Gillette, who was a champion of modern art in Ireland. He was also assisted in setting up the Irish exhibition of living art, to where in 1944 he sold his first oil painting. Dillon was able to return to London in the year of 1945. During the years of the 1940s and the 1950s, towards the late 1950s, he decided to move away from the subject of landscape painting and pursue the focus of abstraction, which was influenced by the abstract expressionism art movement. From the years of 1953 to 1955, Dillon was forced to take part in part-time jobs such as a night porter, in order to support himself financially for his painting, literacy, activity, and illustrated work. In 1956, he was officially appointed to the position of art teacher at the St. Shepherd's Bush, and then, later on, to the Gloucester Road, which he held the position for the past 5 years. In 1962, Gerard's brother Joe died. Gerard's brother Joe was the one member of his family that he was most attached to. Later, Dillon gave a painting to Madge Conley and the Passes of Time, which contained 2 masked Parriots. Within this painting, one Parriot is holding out a hand of the departing Parriot. This was seen as a form of symbolism towards Gerard's days together with Joe, and then the departure of his brother's life. Towards the ending years of his life, Gerard Dillon began to paint images of Parriots with masks. The figure of the Parriot clown acted as a stand-in for Dillon. Instead of involving himself inside his work, he used the clown as a representation of himself. Within the early stages of Dillon's Parriot paintings, Tom McGrainer expressed that he got a sense of sadness coming from Dillon's paintings. Dillon gave the answer that he believed that this was a method of demonstrating that nature is telling you you're on your way out. The painting, The Brothers, was one of the earliest of Dillon's art pieces that included a Parriot, which is designed a Parriot to be crying over 3 skeleton graves. This painting is a form of symbolism towards Gerard Dillon's grieving over the death of his 3 brothers, that all died over the short time period of 5 years. Joe died in 1962, Patrick died in 1964, and in December 1966, John died. In 1965, within Elia, Dillon presented 4 other similar paintings. One of these 4 paintings were known as Parriot and Picture, which contained a parrot figure being seated on the ground with his left hand over his eyes, to give the impression of Dillon's strong grief and sadness. He felt like a burden to himself. As for the landscape behind the Parriot, it was linear and had a farm outside and machinery. The artist met an unfortunate ending when he had a stroke and then died on the 14th of June 1971. The artist's sudden death prevented a final trip for him to London organised by his nephew Gerard. Gerard Dillon's final requests were for him to be buried in a real old untidy Belfast graveyard. He was then buried in an unmarked grave at the Belfast Milltown Cemetery. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tour today, and you'll be inspired to take a look at the other tours online.